In the winter of 2022, France issued a nationwide warning that sounded almost unreal. Prepare for rolling blackouts. The message was simple. The country might not have enough electricity to survive the cold season. And for a nation that prides itself on one of the most advanced nuclear power systems in the world, the idea was shocking. But this crisis did something important. It pushed millions of Europeans to ask a question they rarely think about. Where does France actually get the uranium that powers its nuclear reactors? And why is a country with so much technological wealth so dependent on one of the poorest nations on Earth? To answer that, we have to zoom out, far away from Paris, and deep into the Sahara. After the 1973 oil embargo, France made a historic decision. Never again would its energy security be left in someone else's hands. Within 2 decades, France built one of the world's largest nuclear fleets. At its peak, over 56 reactors, supplying nearly 75 to 80% of the country's electricity. Cheap, stable, domestic. That was the promise. But there was a loophole. Nuclear energy isn't fully domestic. Reactors need uranium, a lot of it. And by the late 1980s, French uranium mines were running out and becoming too expensive to operate. So French policymakers turned to a strategy they had used for over a century. If you don't have the resources at home, you get them from your former colonies. That's where Niger enters the story. A country rich in resources, yet ranked among the poorest on Earth. Beneath its sand lies something extraordinary. One of the world's richest uranium deposits. Uranium was first discovered there in 1959 by French geological agencies. 1 year before, Niger formally became independent. But independent might be too generous a term. From the 1960s onward, uranium contracts between France and Niger carried deeply colonial fingerprints. French companies enjoyed sweeping tax exemptions. Niger received only a tiny share of the revenue, often below 6%. Export duties, fuel taxes, equipment taxes, all waived. And perhaps most importantly, France controlled pricing. By the early 2000s, uranium from Niger was literally keeping France's lights on, at one point, powering 1/3 of France's electricity. But the people living next to those mines? Many didn't even have electricity at home. In 2006, Niger introduced a new mining code that raised taxes on uranium from 5.5% to 12%. A small step toward justice. There was just one problem. France's state-owned company Areva, now rebranded as Orano, was protected by a 2001 contract that exempted it from the new law until 2014. So when renegotiation time came, Niger took a stand. Pay the fair rate, 12%, the same you pay in Canada and Kazakhstan. France was not pleased. In late 2013, Areva abruptly shut down its Niger uranium operations, claiming maintenance. In reality, it was pressure. Economic blackmail aimed at forcing Niger to accept lower taxes. But Niger didn't back down. By 2014, Areva finally signed a new agreement. Higher taxes, reduced exemptions, and a pledge to invest 90 million euros in local infrastructure. A win? Not quite. Because France had one more tool up its sleeve. After the 2014 agreement, Niger should have seen its revenues rise. Instead, they fell. In 2013, before the new rules, Niger earned around $15 million from Areva's biggest mine. In 2015, under the higher tax rate, it received just $11 million. How? A simple maneuver. Orano lowered the official sale price of uranium on its internal books, from over $110 per kilogram to under $80 per kilogram. Lower price on paper equals lower profit equals lower taxes. It was a loophole that allowed France to keep benefiting from Niger's uranium, while Niger continued receiving far less than it should. And that brings us to 2023, the year everything flipped. In July, Niger's president was removed in a sudden military coup. France reacted with outrage, but not only for political reasons. Because suddenly, for the first time in history, Niger's military leadership signaled that France might lose access to its uranium. They suspended agreements, expelled French troops, and began courting new partners like Russia and China. And in December 2023, Niger took the unprecedented step of halting uranium exports to France. French energy officials panicked, quietly, because although France imports uranium from Canada, Kazakhstan, and Australia, Niger had long provided roughly 15 to 20% of its supply. And losing Niger wasn't just an economic risk, it was symbolic. It represented the collapse of a 60-year system where France extracted resources from Africa under conditions Africans had little power to negotiate. By 2024, France was forced to accelerate uranium deals elsewhere and rely more on recycled nuclear fuel. But the message from Niger was clear. If France wants uranium in the future, it will have to pay fair prices or step aside. For decades, France sold its nuclear program to the world as a success story. Clean, reliable energy that kept prices low. But behind that success was a different reality, one in which the light bulbs of Paris were powered by the poverty of Nigerian communities. Meanwhile, Niger ranked among the poorest 10 countries worldwide. Towns near uranium mines faced radiation contamination. Most local workers earned a fraction of what French engineers did. And electricity? In many mining regions, fewer than 15% of households were connected to the grid. In other words, the country powering Europe sat in the dark. As of 2025, France's uranium supply chain looks very different. Niger has shifted toward new partners, especially China. Orano still operates some facilities, but under strict scrutiny and without the dominance it once enjoyed. France is increasingly relying on Australia, Kazakhstan, and Canada. And Europe is investing heavily in small modular reactors and recycled nuclear fuel to reduce dependency. But the big question remains: has the colonial structure really disappeared? Or has it simply moved from France to new global powers? Because Niger's uranium is still there, and the world's demand for it, especially in a planet racing toward green energy, is only growing. Do you think Niger has finally broken free from the grip of the great powers? Or is this story far from over? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dive investigations.